we have a very experienced panel to wrap with you in this session. Justice Minister the Honorable Delroy Chuck QC, Mrs. Sharon Folks Abrams, lecturer at the Faculty of Law, UWI Mona, Mrs. Sharon Young Palmer, Training and Mediation Manager at the Disputes Resolution Foundation, and also Ms. Tamika Bryce, student at the Norman Manley Law School. Welcome, and we will hear from each of them a little later on. Now, many of the programs we have at the Justice Ministry are made possible through partnerships with various agencies. Access Justice Live virtual town hall meetings have been brought to you with the kind support of the National Integrity Action and the European Union delegation to Jamaica. Both entities have been steady justice sector partners as we get the word out to Jamaicans about the services we have for you. I now invite Mr. Hezekiah Hall, Project Coordinator at the NIA, to address us.
Honorable Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck, distinguished members of the panel, our viewing and listening audience, good afternoon. I want to express my high commendations to the Ministry of Justice on continuing their work to ensure that our Jamaican citizens are kept informed on the legal services that are available to them. This final leg in the series of town hall meetings is aimed at improving the public's knowledge of the mediation mechanisms available to them. In other words, we hope to have fostered public awareness around the remedies for justice, to sensitize the public, and to explain the processes and procedures of alternative dispute resolution. This is a great step towards strengthening the relationship with the justice sector and communities by building trust and confidence in the justice system. Within this critical process of establishing strong institutions and providing access to justice for all, the work of the European Union has by far been commendable. The EU has maintained its loyal partnership to Jamaica's development through the Combating Corruption project implemented by the National Integrity Action. This is one of the many indications of the EU work with National Integrity Action and our country by extension. As we are faced with the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic on one hand and social ills of crime and violence on the other, partnerships such as this are critical to building a safe and cohesive and just society. National Integrity Action, as part of the civil society group, engaged in the combat against corruption and strengthening of good governance in Jamaica, is once more very pleased to be associated with the Ministry of Justice and the EU in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hall. Now, as we go into our discussions, I remind our viewers and listeners to send your questions about alternative dispute resolution methods to our social media pages. We will answer them during the program. On Facebook, it's mojofficial.jm. On Twitter, it's at transformjustjm. On Instagram, it's mojjamaica. And on the website, it's moj.gov.jm. So we're about to enter the holiday season where we sing and talk a lot about peace. This is therefore an opportune time for us to focus on alternative dispute resolutions under our theme, Finding Peaceful Solutions Together. Now, Minister Chuck, over the years when you talk about ADRs, you have effectively been sending the message to the public to give peace a chance and avoid unnecessary formal court proceedings. So, to start us off today, I would like you to tell us just the basics, that everyone can possibly understand and it's easier for everyone to follow about some of the programs provided by the ministry.
Thank you very much. And let me also thank our sponsors, the European Union and National Integrity Action. Also like to thank our presenters who will be doing most of the talking, and we expect calls or questions to them for them to better explain where I would fail. Now, let me just immediately say that ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution, is one of the major successes of the Ministry of Justice, but it is not known. And this is why we have decided to have these town hall meetings, and certainly over the coming months and years, we want to let Jamaica know that ADR must be a vital, focal priority of resolving disputes in the communities, reducing the burden on the courts, reducing the challenges to the police, and ensuring that when people get into conflict, they resolve their conflicts without resort to abuses, to violence, and oftentimes to death. Far too many people believe that the solution to dispute is with violence, or that they must abuse another person with whom you have a dispute, or because you're disrespected. We must use the other means to resolve conflicts, disputes, disagreements. All the difficulties that we have with one another can easily be resolved, and it is happening across Jamaica. We have 18 restorative justice centers, and in these 18 restorative justice centers, we have a 90% success rate where people having disputes, they actually go to the justice centers, restorative justice centers. They get a restorative justice facilitator to listen to them. And once they come together, in 90% of the cases, these matters are settled. Just recently, we decided that we would open 2 restorative justice centers in West Kingston. Let me tell you, they have been major success stories. And I want to say, one of the leading light of West Kingston, a lady known as Daphne Hurge, she participated, and unfortunately, because of age, ill health, she called me just 2 days ago to say she has to discontinue. But she said, Mr. Chuck, this program of restorative justice is the best program she has ever participated in. And when you look at the success story just this year, I got the figures for just this year. Denham Town had 81 conferences, restorative justice conferences, and there was a peaceful settlement in 73 of them. Tivoli Gardens had conferences in 123 cases, and there were peaceful settlements in 112 cases. What I'm saying is, and in other parishes, there were 1435 cases, and almost 1,100 were settled peacefully. Please, listeners, viewers, people who are in conflict, there's no reason to resolve it with abuses, retaliation, violence, and more, and creating more problems. Let others assist you in resolving these disputes. We will be discussing other types of dispute resolution. My fellow presenters will be dealing with things like mediation, arbitration, and we'll also let you know that we have at the Ministry of Justice across every parish victim services. So persons who are victims, rather than retaliate, we'll tell you more how you can go to the victim services to find some peace of mind without resorting to retaliation. So much more to say, but I think I've spoken enough.
Thank you so much, Minister. But Mrs. Palmer, for our viewers and our listeners, I think they would possibly want just a simplified version of what it is for them to just understand an ADR. Speaking from the perspective of the Dispute Resolution Foundation, could you please just explain that for us?
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon to our listeners worldwide, I must say. So when we speak to alternative dispute resolution, it is the method that is used to resolve disputes outside of litigation in the courts in any jurisdiction. So when we speak to ADR and ADR processes, we speak to restorative justice, as Minister Chuck just indicated. We're speaking to also mediation, arbitration, conciliation, and of course you have a little bit more informal approach where you'll have a conflict management intervention. So sometimes you may not have a full mediation, but persons might be in conflict in a community, in the workplace, and you can have that process also just to manage the conflict before it exacerbates and gets out of hand. So speaking to ADR, it's about these processes: mediation, arbitration, restorative justice, conciliation, and so on. And conciliation is used a lot even at the Ministry of Labor, where there are disputes of, employer-employee and so on and so forth. So as Minister said, we have a wide range of processes. So there's no need for us to handle our disputes in a manner that causes violence.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Palmer. But Mrs. Sharon Folks Abrams, I know that there are a number of the methods that you possibly introduced to your law students. Would you care to share the different ADR methods that you introduced to your law students?
Certainly. It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the Minister for inviting us to this very important forum. ADR, as my colleague has already stated, is any form of settling a dispute outside of the court formal system. So anything, and there's a spectrum, and she has mentioned some of those articles in the spectrum. So we start with prevention, such as conciliation, and then we move on to negotiation, and then from negotiation we can go into mediation, and after mediation we can look at some form of objective dispute resolution by getting someone who is an expert in the area perhaps to look at the situation and then give an expert opinion as to what they think your chances of success might be at a trial, and to give you an idea of whether or not you should go to trial or try to settle before going into the court system. And this is very useful because you can also use retired judges to give you an opinion as to what road you should go down. And besides that, then there's arbitration, but there's arbitration and mediation combined, or mediation and arbitration combined. Arbitration and mediation are different in that arbitration, you have an act called the Arbitration Act 2017. I want to commend the Minister for updating this act. It is a new act. It deals with the UNCITRAL rules of mediation and negotiation and arbitration, which helps to iron out commercial disputes. And this helps in promoting more business and more commercial activities. And so we have that spectrum, as well as in the situation where we're dealing with a criminal law system, we have community policing and also restorative justice and some of the diversion projects as well. So these are all very useful, and we teach them all to our law students. At the third year, there's an option to do ADR, and if they do not choose to take that option at that time, then it is mandatory at law school. So we find it very important to do ADR. It helps with the justice system. It reduces the backlog of cases. It takes people out of the contentious issues in a courtroom, and it helps to bring forth justice in a way that is creative and empowering of the parties.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just about to ask, what do you think Jamaica gains from having your law students exposed to these ADR methods? And I think you just wrapped that up. But we have a law student on our panel, Ms. Tamika Bryce. Welcome. So tell us about some of the training you have experienced. at the law school.
Thank you very much for having me, Minister. And thank you to all your listeners. As a law student at the University of the West Indies, the Mona campus, we were exposed to not only the theoretical aspects of ADR, but also the practical aspects. We, at most times, we did role play for arbitration, mediation, and negotiation. We were exposed to various facets of these programs, rather. And what we placed emphasis on, what emphasis was placed on more so, was principled negotiation, in that we looked primarily at more interest-based negotiation, as opposed to just, interest-based negotiation really deals with development, communication. So it helped us more so to understand more what it is that the ADR programs had to offer. As it relates to mediation, we obviously know that there are certain benefits of mediation. As Ms. Fox Abraham has pointed out, right. It's less contentious. Right. And in the society that we live in, it's a skill that we need, well, as an attorney in training, as myself, it is not only that we need litigation skills, but also dispute resolution skills. Right. And it is something that I thank the university for, because it will help me greatly in my career that I am heading towards.
It's so interesting, because you mentioned that it saves a number of things, but it also saves time and money. Right. Time, not only your time, but the time within the court system in and of itself. I'm talking about the attorneys and the judges for other matters that we need to push through as well. But Minister, that's possibly one of the important factors as it relates to ADR. But could you tell us, what do you think is the value of Jamaicans using more of these ADR methods?
The value is enormous. It cannot be measured in monetary terms. Singapore, we hear a lot about Singapore.
Yes.
They have now made ADR, mediation and arbitration, the focus of their court system.
Right.
In other words, you have arbitration and ADR. Most of the attorneys in Singapore make more money than in any other case, than in any other methodology, from mediation and arbitration, because it is a professional way about settling disputes. I think Jamaicans should recognize that not only are the courts overburdened,
right,
but going to court is oftentimes a lose-lose situation. At best, it is a win-lose situation. One person is going to lose when you go to court.
Right.
If you go to alternative dispute resolution, it is a win-win situation.
There's some form of middle ground.
There's a middle ground that both sides, but not only that, in the majority of cases, the two parties can restore their relationship.
Yes.
When you go to court and one person wins, believe me, not only do they continue to fight to the Court of Appeal and maybe to a higher court, but they fight for the rest of their lives.
Yes, there's still a lot of tension there.
So what we want to send to Jamaicans, there's no need to overburden the courts and wait 4 or 5 years, sometimes 7 years, and maybe longer, to have a lose-lose situation. So we are asking litigants, we are asking attorneys, why trouble the court to go there and continue to lose? Because one side will lose. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the benefit of the system, what we are saying is ADR provide a simple solution, a cost-effective strategy,
yes,
and it avoids further difficulties, conflicts, and burden to the society.
Yes.
I'm just going to throw this question out, and anyone can answer. We mentioned the time, and we mentioned how cost-effective is it. Do you think that as Jamaicans, because we have so much pride sometimes and so much ego, especially when we're upset about something, do you think that's what propels persons or actually push them to stick to litigation? Because a lot of times when there are issues, one of the first things that comes up is, I am taking you to court. So do you think then that is just a matter of possibly pride and ego that drives persons towards litigation versus using ADR methods? Anyone?
Okay. I'd like to take that one.
Okay, Mrs. Palmer.
Yes, thank you. Based on my experience, I'd like to say it may be a matter of pride, but it's a matter of also culture. Because that is how we are cultured to know that once someone offends you in a way that you feel should not have happened, and you feel strongly and they disrespect me, and you know, I'm taking you to court because I'm going to serve you a lesson. You need to be disciplined. And we think that it is only through the courts that we can get justice or discipline. I want to send you a strong message. However, on the other hand, you also find that it has to do with a lack of education. Because, and I really want to commend the Ministry of Justice and the Honorable Minister Chuck for really pushing the ADR process as he has been doing since he has been in this office. Because you find more and more that persons are really understanding more about these ADR processes. Even if they don't understand, they know about it. And what I have found is that they are referred from the court. As a mediator, you see them come in. They don't even want to come into the room. And once they get there and the process unfolds, because you wonder at times if it's the same person who just told you that I want the court to deal with my matter. Or if it's the same person who just said to you, I don't have enough time.
Okay.
I need to go somewhere else and I need to be somewhere else. Once the process begins to unfold and they see that they're understanding from the other person's perspective, the other person is understanding from their perspective, and they begin now to arrive and to move towards solutions, I can assure you that there is no greater joy for them. At the end of the process, they will commend you as the mediator, commend the process, because they say, I'm happy I was here. I never knew that this could be resolved. I remember I was dealing with some clients and they said to me, Miss Palmer, do you know how long this has been going on? I said, no, 25 years.
Wow.
I said, what? And they said, yes, 25 years. It started from our grandparents, then our parents took it on, and now we have taken it on. And you would never believe what the matter is about. All right? And so when they were able to move towards a solution, they almost didn't want to leave. And so I believe the more people are educated about these processes and they see that they're not being forced to give up anything that they don't want to give up. A settlement is not forced on them. It's their choice. And that's how the win-win comes in. Because once they decide and they purpose in their heart that I'm okay with giving up this, I'm okay with accepting this, then you find that they are more eager and willing to honor the agreement that they would have arrived at. And so I believe, we really need to be more, just spreading this word across the island, that people can really understand what it is about. So the sensitization is very important. And once they buy into that process, let me tell you, Jamaica will be the real place to live, raise families, do business, and retire.
It's so interesting that you shared that story, Ms. Palmer, because I remember I had a matter once that actually started when I was 1. When I don't think at the time I could even talk or walk, but as a result of mediation, we were able to find a middle ground and some form of conclusion then per se. But Mrs. Folks Abrams, I have to ask you if you have any experiences that you would like to share with us, while you're practicing, or how has ADR methods helped you and your clients resolve some of their issues?
Oh, yes, very interesting stories, many indeed. And what we teach, the theory behind what Ms. Palmer has just spoken about, is moving from positioning in your bargaining, positioning, digging your heels into an interest-based mediation. So instead of looking at, you know, your hard and fast position, I want $100,000 and I'm not taking anything less. And the other person is saying, I'm not giving you a penny. And instead of digging your heels in, ask the question, why? Why are you taking this position? And then you find out the underlying interests of both parties. And when you understand the interests, and then you make a list of what those interests are, you can ask them to look at these and say, do you agree with this? And you'll find that there's middle ground that you can arrive at.
Yes.
In my own experience, I have a lot of experience actually in the courts in Ontario, Canada, where mediation is a must. And in fact, in some areas of the court, it is actually mandatory, right? So you cannot set down your case for trial unless you have actually agreed to go through the mediation process. And even where it's not mandatory, if you refuse to go through that process, there is penalties for you at the end of the day because you're wasting the court's time. You may in fact not even get what you think you should have gotten, and even if you get that, the court is going to reduce it by the cost that you cause the court to pay. And so I think in my experience, I definitely remember one mediation where we tried to convince the person to take, I think it was 20,000 Canadian dollars. And he said, I'm not taking a penny less than 40,000. On what basis are you saying you're required to get 40,000? No basis. The person went to the trial and lost completely.
Wow.
Zero. Ended up with no money. And so it behoves us to look at our situation. It's not always I'm right or the other person is all wrong. Usually there's middle ground. Sometimes there's misunderstandings. Sometimes the law is not what we think the law is. Completely different from how we imagine it will end up at a trial. A judge may see it totally different from how you see it and perceive it. And so I would say the Ministry of Justice here is doing a great job in terms of moving ADR through the court system, through the communities, and through the entire Jamaica. And we appreciate it.
Moving ADR and introducing it in more aspects to Jamaicans indeed. Now, I know that we have introduced ADR methods at the University of the West Indies. Also, if you are in or attending the Norman Manley Law School, but in the high school, it's also important. So I would like Mrs. Palmer to actually, explain to me or tell us about the school suspension intervention program, because not only is it important for us to have an idea and to be knowledgeable about ADR and ADR methods from university onwards, but I think that when they say that as Jamaicans, you have to nip it in the bud. I think that's what we are trying to do as well. So Ms. Palmer, could you share that with us?
Sure. Thank you again. And I'm very happy to share this one with you because indeed it's my baby. So the supervised school intervention program started in 2006. It actually started in Spanish Town in St. Catherine, where then I was the administrator manager for the Peace and Justice Center there. And having found that the students were being suspended from schools and sometimes the parents didn't know, and they were suspended for a week, 2 weeks, and they went back to school with the same behavior because there was no treatment for their behavior, so they would be suspended repeatedly. You found them locked out of schools, and parents were just having a hard time. They were being drafted into groups and gangs that they really never needed to be in. So you had all of that going on with the youth. And I had a meeting with a principal of one of our schools in Spanish Town, and she was really expressing her distress at the situation that was going on with the students. And I was already in the process of having the program, and I said, listen, I have a program. And this program, when the students are suspended, just send them to me, send them to us. We will address the behavior and so on. And we started from there. We introduced the suspension program. What we did was to ensure that the students who came, once they were suspended, the school would give us we required that they give us their coursework that they would have been doing at the time they were suspended, they would have been on suspension. And so they would not miss out on any of the work that they would have been doing if they were in school. So that was one thing. And also, we would now introduce to them conflict management, anger management, rapport building. We had one-on-one conversations with them. And of course, the parents would have to be a part of the suspension program. So they would be at the intake process first, and we would get some background information from them. And the students now would participate in the program. What we did was also to involve the schools in a different kind of way. So students who we knew needed counseling, we would ask the counselors from other schools to volunteer. So we had school guidance counselors who would come and offer their volunteer for 2 hours per week or something like that, and we would match them now with students who were not from their schools. Okay. Right? And so, that helped with the process. We had retired teachers, we had other professionals, business persons, persons just coming in to give 1-hour talks to them, 45 minutes, just having rap sessions with them, and so on. And what we found was that the problem was not about the maladaptive behavior that they were they were exhibiting at school, but there were underlying issues that were deeper than just
you had to address that.
Exactly.
Then. Okay.
So a student might have been suspended for, let's say, not wearing the proper uniform, or they were suspended for being late. Right. And that's a popular one. But nobody sought to address why is this student coming late all the time.
Well, I think, Ms. Palmer, I think the best way for probably our listeners and our viewers to relate to exactly what you're saying is to hear a testimony.
Exactly.
And I think we have a special guest here with us this afternoon, Mr. Dave Hines. He's here to share his experiences with us as a recipient of the ADR intervention program from the DRF.
Good afternoon to the Minister of Justice and everyone else. Thanks for having me. My name is Dave Hines, and my experience at the dispute resolution was a great one. How I ended up at the Dispute Resolution Foundation is that I had an incident at school, and we had to go to the Dean of Discipline, but the Dean of Discipline said that it was too big for the school, so we had to end up to the Dispute Resolution Foundation. And there we learned time management, how to solve our issues and not to make it go overbound. And from there I meet Mrs. Taylor, and from there I found somebody trustworthy that I could express myself there. And now I'm currently in college doing my associate degree.
Oh, wow. So it seems that these intervention programs, they've been quite effective, and they've been building trust among the youth. And trust is such a touchy thing every now and then, especially when trust is broken. Yes, that's when everything else is broken down sometimes, or has been broken down, right?
Indeed.
Ms. Palmer?
And it is very important to note that we don't offer a touch and go intervention. Once they arrive at our centers, they now become a part of the DRF family. And so what you will find is that we get to the bottom of their problems.
Right.
And once that trust has been established, you find that the parents become a part of it, and whatever resources we can garner from any of our other partner and donor agencies, we assist our students. Many find it difficult for just, we may say food, but for food, for meals. And once we are able to get that from our partners, for example, of Food for the Poor, we share that with our students, and the response from our parents where that is concerned is usually very overwhelming. They are so grateful. And the students usually come back to us. You have many of them who return, and when the students are in the program, they now take over from time to time and share their experiences and encourage the students who are part of the program.
And I guess they try to pass down
on
what they have learned.
What they have learned, and to encourage them to move towards the positive and stay on the course that they have.
Path.
Yes.
I totally get you, Mrs. Palmer.
Yes.
But I have a question for the minister coming from Facebook, from Telma Boddington. Ms. Boddington is asking, is the police trained or aware of this system where they can recommend it to persons before taking them to court over minor matters?
Very good question. Thanks for asking that question. It gives me the opportunity to indicate that that has been a challenge, because there have been some police that refer matters to the restorative justice centers or to mediators, as the case may be. But many simply deal with the court. So less than 2 weeks ago, we actually took a team, the second time, to meet with the high command of the police force. Firstly, we met with them in relation to child diversion. So when young children get involved with the law, if it is not a real serious offense, try and see if it can be dealt with by a child diversion officer.
Okay.
Then they went there on the last occasion to indicate about restorative justice, that we need more policemen who see and anticipate problems to refer the parties to the Restorative Justice Center. The commissioner was so interested. The High Command was so keen. They asked how could they get trainers, you know, to be trained senior policemen to be trained, so that all of the police force could be trained in restorative justice.
Okay.
Because I can tell you, I have participated in a few of these training sessions where we have been training police officers, and at the end of it, when I go to address them, the main question they ask me, why are we not training more people in this concept? And that is what I explained to the commissioner, and we are now going to be rolling out many training, so that every single senior police officer, and perhaps right down to every constable, understand the concept, know that you don't have to drag everyone into the court. You can deal with it by referring the matter to a restorative justice facilitator, to a child justice officer, another arbitration or other alternative dispute resolution. So the truth of the simple answer to your question is that it has started, but much more needs to be done.
And it will be improved
Absolutely.
in time. But Minister, do you think that then this will help to build the relationship between Jamaicans and the police? Because sometimes you find that there is a bit of a trust issue happening there. Yeah, sometimes you find that. So do you think that introducing this, the methods, the alternative dispute resolution methods, more to the police, will that then enhance the relationship between the police force and Jamaicans?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that, you know, in all sincerity, and I'm going to be quoted on this, and people will criticize me for it, but we are never going to solve crime unless there's trust and confidence of the citizens in the police.
Okay.
Regrettably, it is too low. We need the police to be able to work closer in partnership with the people and the citizens of the communities for us to be able to say that the citizens in every community trust the police, have confidence in the police.
Right.
And therefore, without that partnership, regrettably, crime and violence will not be solved. Because every citizen, or most citizens in a community, know who is committing a crime. But they are reluctant to tell the police. And unless they tell the police, crime will never be resolved. Crime will not be stopped. Because the citizens in every community believe they can get away, because even those in their communities who see it don't have the trust and confidence to inform the police. So I agree, trust and confidence are important concepts for us to be able to solve crime. Okay. Now, I can go on forever, but that is why, you see, I have always felt that community policing is the best and safest way to really bring the society peace. There are many persons who consider it to be soft policing. Everybody wants hard policing. But the truth of the matter is that community policing works. It works in Grand Spend. It works in Barbican. It works in Shortwood. Works in Ligoni. But everybody believes hard policing is what. So
and sometimes that's not always the case. That's not always the case. But Minister, we also want to know, are you planning to widen the scope of what the ministry now offers?
Absolutely. For instance, we have, as I said, we have several restorative justice centers. The instruction that has been given to the restorative justice facilitator is not only to train as many police as possible, but to train at least 3 teachers in every school.
Okay.
Apart from that, to train persons in the church. You would be amazed the amount of disputes you have in the churches. To train enough facilitators in the communities. And apart from that, next year, we are going to, Ms. Palmer, with your assistant or anybody else's assistant, we are going to roll out mediation. We want to pass a Mediation Act. We want Jamaica to be the mediation center for the Western Hemisphere. Just like how Singapore is the mediation center for Asia.
Yes.
We would like Jamaica to be the mediation center. No, yes, it is about resolving disputes within the communities, stopping the backlog of cases. But in Singapore, most of the mediation they do are from India, Philippines, Indonesia, Australia, across the world, because they have now professionalized.
Right.
They have now made mediation so good that people come to Singapore to have mediation done. And I'm saying we intend, between arbitration and mediation, make Jamaica, it will be a major foreign exchange earner for Jamaica.
Right.
But it is to get that leadership and the participants
and level of
to
training
push it
as
forward.
well. The level of training required
Absolutely.
here in Jamaica and the centers, just to have the facility ready to go. So we have another question coming in from Facebook from Jean Lee. The question is, what happens if the situation is resolved after the dispute resolution session? Who wants to take that one? Mrs. Fox Abrams or Mrs. Palmer? Or
Well,
both?
okay,
You can both
Okay.
respond.
Right, so I'll respond in terms of the court situation. If you are in fact in litigation and you do try to mediate or settle a matter and it's not settled, and there was a serious attempt made, then it goes on to the next stage, which is a trial. But even on the doorsteps of the courthouse, one can still forge an agreement,
Yes.
a settlement. And when we look at even, the scriptures, Matthew 5:25 says, settle with thine adversary on the way to the courthouse. And so there it is, even back then.
Miss Fox Abrams brought in the Bible to show you how serious it is from before our time, and will even be after our time.
This has been for a long time in the making. It's not something new.
Right.
That is to show you that all civilizations through the history of civilizations have done. Mediations, restorative justice, healing circles, all of these indigenous communities settle matters in a community by getting together and deciding how things should happen. And if you can reconcile, that's even better. The thing about ADR is that it helps with reconciliation, it helps with relationships. Right. So the whole aim of it is to end on a high note, a win-win.
And then as a result of that, there possibly will not be a reoccurrence of anything or anything close to that kind of situation between the two of you.
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that if it is that you don't resolve the matter in mediation, even if it is that you are outside the doors of the court right before the matter has started, if something is on your heart or on your chest, your attorney can simply just say, my lady, we need to just have the matter stood down for 15 minutes.
Yes.
Let us have some discussions with counsel.
Yes.
And I mean, between both attorneys, then there can be some form of agreement, and then that would then be presented to the court in a formal manner. Sorry.
Yes.
But I think that Mrs. Palmer, now you're going to speak to it from the perspective of the Dispute Resolution Foundation.
Yes. Thank you. So once persons attend mediation, and if upon several attempts, because we never usually just leave it for the first attempt and so on. We try, our mediators work with them. So because you may have matters that have been going on for, like I've said, 25 years, 12, 13 years. But so it will not take one session to have it resolved. And so the mediators are trained and skilled to offer the kind of encouragement and motivation to the parties towards continued buy-in into the process. So it's a lot of encouragement, because you'll have persons from the outset, they step into the room, I want the court to deal with this.
Right.
And that's their mindset. So the mediator has to work at moving them from that space to where they ought to be in terms of listen. The judge will act based on the evidence presented, the law that needs to be established or what law has been broken, or how he or she views the situation at the time based on what is set before him or her. Right. Yeah. And that decision might be made based on those three things. And at the end of the day, you're not satisfied. So you have the privilege here today of being your own judge.
And also to help to make that decision. But I know sometimes while the mediation is taking place, something might come across in my head and I don't want the other party to hear about it. You have an opportunity to actually sit with the mediator yourself.
Yes.
Right? You have an opportunity to actually say, look, I want to speak with the mediator myself. And the other party will then be removed, and you might have a little 15 minutes or to say, look, I'm really not being hard, but I just wanted to teach them a lesson, but I will settle for this.
Yes.
So there's some form of caucus
and
that
that's,
actually
right,
takes
that's
place.
called the caucus.
Right.
And so, incidentally, as we speak, we're training about 8 or 9 attorneys. We're conducting training now, and we have a number of attorneys who are being trained as mediators, understanding the process, utilizing the process, and selling it to their clients. And so in that caucus, yes, it is an opportunity to have that one-on-one, off-the-record conversation with the clients so that they can get that buy-in, and they'll give you their bottom line just to say, yeah, man, yeah. Right. And sometimes a mediation is settled on just one person showing remorse and apologizing.
And that's it.
And that's it. And I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars go through the door because one person just came up front and said, listen, I'm sorry about this. This should not have happened. We should not even be here like this, and so on and so forth. And they settle. So the danger is sometimes when a when an apology is demanded, you have a problem
Well,
there.
that's, I mean, I
but
think
then you know what that is.
That's another perspective and another conversation.
But just to answer quickly the caller's question, what happens if a mediation is not resolved after the session? So they still have the opportunity to return to mediation. We leave that open for them so that they know that you might not have resolved the matter, but we always show them what they have achieved throughout the session. So you might not have come to a full resolution, but most of the times they are able to. They're one step closer, and they might have better understood the issues that they came there not understanding what is happening at all.
So I have to bring in Miss Bryce here on this one. I know that you have been introduced to these ADR methods. We want to know, are you excited about, the prospects of mediation or the ADR methods going forward, and how do you possibly intend to use them in your professional life?
Thank you very much for that question. So I am very excited, and I will reiterate over and over again what the Minister and the panel has said here today. Alternative dispute resolutions have great benefits, profound benefits, and I will encourage our listeners and our viewers to always try that method as opposed to litigation. The benefits, again, are far-reaching. It saves you time, it saves you money, it's less contentious, it's more private, So there are so many great benefits to litigation. For myself, moving towards a career in the legal fraternity, I look forward to using alternative dispute resolutions, and I will always encourage my clients when they come in, like, listen, this is better, this is the better avenue to take. I give you an example. Say I have a client who walks in and may have a boundary dispute. I obviously will recommend mediation because, you guys can sit, you will talk, you will come to the root of the problem. You won't necessarily need to go to a court, because a court will invariably, one person is going to be more successful and the other person is going to walk away a loser. With mediation, it's a compromise. There's always a win-win.
Right.
And if you have a boundary dispute, you wouldn't want to take that to the court system. You would want to sit and talk about it and come to a viable solution that involves both parties coming to that solution. And what it will do is that if you do that and you go through mediation, as opposed to not doing that, you may have an issue of wounding or malicious wounding that if you didn't do it, and you don't want that. So mediation and alternative dispute resolution always takes you away from crime. And that's the message I believe everyone is trying to send here today, that you want to take these alternative dispute resolutions into consideration because it is much, much better than resorting to litigation. I will always stress that. And when my clients walk in, I will obviously advise them of what's more feasible for them, and in the long run, as again, it will save you time and money in your pocket. Thank you.
All right. So I have another question coming in. Dwayne Henry is asking, what are the dates for training in St. James? Or, well, I wouldn't even be so specific with St. James. I think that our listeners and our viewers, they're interested in finding out about ADR. They want to know how they can get trained, how other persons can get some form of training as well, just to get some information how to resolve these disputes. So who is going to answer that one for me? Is that the Minister?
There are different types of training. For instance, restorative justice is really a voluntary thing that people offer themselves as restorative justice facilitators. And these are mainly GPs, but anyone can be trained as a restorative justice facilitator. It's voluntary.
Okay.
And amazingly, the courts use it significantly. In fact, I give figures about this year. Last year, the courts across the island referred almost 1,900 cases, and 1,500 were actually settled.
Wow.
That assisted with the backlog reduction across Jamaica, especially in St. Mary, I recall. The truth of the matter is that the judges themselves now are encouraging persons to go to, restorative justice or mediation. Now, we are training restorative justice facilitators, and people can go on the website to find the dates, but mediation is a professional vocation. So to the extent that if you want to be trained as a mediator, you pay a certain sum. At the moment, several possibilities, but the DRF does the main training and certification at this time.
Okay.
There are other types of training. Arbitration is one, which, you have different types of training for that. You have conciliation, which Ms. Palmer indicated. We have child diversion training. We do that. And people can go on the website to find the dates that we do training for volunteers, you see, in child diversion and restorative justice facilitation. So the answer is that we don't have any set time. We normally ask the custodies in the parishes for both child diversion and restorative justice to let people know if they would like to participate in a session, they can. But for mediation, it is an application to the DRF so that they can arrange training session for a number of persons.
Okay, I see Ms. Palmer, you'd like to add to that.
Yes, and on our website, www.drfja.org, you can find our suite of training courses there, and you should be able to contact us through that medium also, and we arrange training. We have started conducting our online virtual training because of the social distancing also.
Okay.
So persons can be any part of the island. They don't have to come in to our training center in Kingston anymore or any other location, because we are currently conducting virtual training also.
Everything is actually online right now.
Everything online, yes, yes.
And,
so someone was in transit yesterday, on Monday, sorry, and was participating in the training.
Okay.
So she never missed anything, and that's the good part about the whole virtual
world
space,
that we're in right now.
Yes, so I guess you can be heading off anywhere on an airplane and you're conducting training, or you are participating in training because of the virtual space.
Business as usual.
Business as usual.
I think that persons can also call the Ministry of Justice lines for more information and more details about any training that you are interested in. But we are actually winding down now, so I am going to ask my panelists to just share with us a few final words before we go. I'm going to start with Ms. Tamika Bryce. Just to close out the session, and then we move right along. Ms. Bryce?
Thank you very much. So, lastly, I would like to say, we're not living in a utopian society. We're not promising that alternative dispute resolutions will kill or take away all the ill wills and the evil and the woes of the society. However, we are absolutely sure, because it has been proven, tried and proven, that it does. For a large majority of all the cases that has come through, it has made a significant difference in the society. ADR, it's really twofold. It has a prevention and cure, and it has done both. So I will encourage everyone as gets educated as it relates to alternative dispute resolutions. They've shared the website. Ensure that it is an alternative for you guys. Just please stay away from crime.
Right.
But contentious.
Well, instead of making it alternative, let's look at it as priority.
Precisely, priority.
Ms. Palmer, closing out now, just final few words before we wrap the session up.
Yes, so as my colleague Ms. Bryce said, I ditto what she has said, but also to say that we stand ready with the Ministry of Justice and all other agencies and ministries in the island of Jamaica and outside also of the island here to offer the services of ADR to our citizens. And of course, we have been doing this for 25, 26 years now. And once you have tasted, whether through training or participating as a client at mediation, your life will never be the same.
Never ever be the same.
Exactly,
Never.
because you see it, it may sound strange and foreign to you right now, but once you participate, you see the value. You get value, and it transforms your life. So
Yes,
let us
transforming
move
lives.
forward.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Palmer. Mrs. Folks Abrams, just a final sentence to close us out before we go.
Okay, we stand ready as the University of the West Indies to partner with the Ministry of Justice in ADR and any other form of activity that will assist the Jamaican people and Jamaican justice system. And one more thing, justice delayed is justice denied. And if you go the ADR route, you won't have delay and you won't be denied.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Folks Abrams. And finally, Minister Chuck.
We are now in a pandemic that has infected over 60 million, probably 70 million, and caused the death of over 270,000. Difficulties, disagreements, conflicts are 10 times, a million times more. Human life, our human interaction create disagreements and difficulties. These disagreements and difficulties simmer into greater problems. We have vaccine for these disagreements. It is ADR. In essence, I beg all our viewers and listeners, before your disagreements, your conflicts, your problems get greater, try to find a method to resolve them through alternative dispute resolution.
All right, Minister, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of another engaging afternoon of information sharing brought to you by the Minister of Justice, and we hope you were enlightened by our discussion on alternative dispute resolution, finding peaceful solutions together. Remember, you can visit our Facebook page in your own time to watch the recording of this town hall meeting. Additionally, please do follow us on our website and social media platforms for more information on our services, such as for counseling for victims of crime, diversion programs for children in conflict with the law, how to prepare your will, and how you can get your criminal records expunged. Thank you so much again to our sponsors, the European Union and the National Integrity Action, as well as the Jamaica Information Service for Technical Services. Finally, as we close, Minister Chuck, we understand you are celebrating your birthday today, so we want to say a very, very special happy birthday to you, Minister Chuck, and we extend the warmest wishes to you on this your special day. Ladies and gentlemen, as we enter the holiday, aka the festive season, we remind you to bear in mind the established COVID-19 protocols, and please, please, please celebrate safely and peacefully. I am Talia Suarez, and this has been Access Justice Live, brought to you by the Ministry of Justice, taking justice services to the people of Jamaica. Good afternoon, everyone.
My job is to ensure that every man, woman, and child maintain good health at all times.
Our primary function is to ensure that government services are delivered effectively and efficiently.
We are building forward
together.